I never, ever thought I would say anything like this. He could be so transformative that he could be a Lincoln, a transformational president.
I still believe he's a threat to our democracy.
Any man can put on a skirt, say, I'm a woman, and go into the bathroom.
I've gone to the bathroom next to a man. Oh my goodness, it was so fearful.
If I found you lurking next to me in a men's restroom, I'd feel fearful. I like Mika and Joe, but they did all call him Hitler. Why would you do that?
How else do you speak truth to power if you won't go and sit at the table across from it?
So you know who the actual purest personification of a modern-day fascist is? A member of the woke brigade.
No, I'm
Hang
using
on,
an academic
stop
definition of fascism.
shouting. Do my ears in. You're doing my ears in, Emma. Several years ago, it would have been a cancelable offence to refer to a trans woman as a man. Now the Speaker of the US House of Representatives, third in line for the presidency, is saying this.
Let me be unequivocally clear. A man is a man and a woman is a woman. And a man cannot become a woman.
This is a seismic shift in our recent culture, whether you agree with Mike Johnson or not. And actually, I do. Trump's Republicans feel they have a mandate to not only ignore but completely reverse what they see as a lurch to liberal extremes. And liberals are now extremely angry about it, as they are about most things. At the heart of the latest row is a bill introduced by Congresswoman Nancy Mace. It would ban transgender women from using female bathrooms in the US Capitol. Not by coincidence, it comes just weeks after the first ever trans lawmaker, Sarah McBride, was elected to the House. Representative Mace explained her position like this.
I'm not going to allow biological men into women's private spaces. I will stand in the brink and stand in the way of anyone on the radical left who thinks that it's okay for a penis to be in a women's locker room or a bathroom or a changing room. Hell no. I am not going to stand for it. And the Speaker said it would be in the House rules package. If it's not, I will be ready with a motion, a privileged motion to force a vote on this. This is not okay. I'm a survivor of rape. I'm a survivor of sexual abuse.
Well, that last point's an eye-opener. You might not like Nancy Mace or trust her motives or even agree with her, but she's fighting the exact same ideology that gave us safe spaces. Now Liberals are fighting to deny her right as a sexual abuse victim to feel safe in women's spaces. That doesn't add up. Well, Brian Tyler Cohen, an intelligent Liberal and regular contributor to Uncensored, wrote on X, I truly wouldn't care if a man dressed like the King of England was in the urinal next to me. I get that for extremely online right-wingers, a trip to a public bathroom might be the most memorable moment of the day, but the rest of us truly do not give a shit who is peeing nearby. Well, first, what's wrong with the King of England? He's a fine, magnificent man. Secondly, and most importantly, you're missing the point, aren't you, Brian? This is about making women the priority. I don't really care what you think about this. Not so very long ago, that was actually your fight too, Brian. Remember all that talk of protecting women's rights? Should one solitary trans lawmaker's bathroom access be a red-hot issue in the first days of a new government? Well, probably not, but it's symbolic. It's just like trying to force everyone to state their pronouns or refer to women as menstruating persons. What seems like a small, polite gesture is an insidious way of making everybody comply with an ideology they may wish to regret. Democratic Congressman Seth Moulton has been savaged by his own party for saying he doesn't want his daughters to get run over by a formerly male athlete.
I was just speaking authentically as a dad about one of many issues where I think we're just out of touch with the majority of voters.
Well, he's right. The vast majority of voters completely agree with him. It's not even close. Moulton's campaign manager resigned in protest over those comments. Think about that for a moment. Really? The Democrats should be very glad to see that person go. They should rebuild the liberal movement around people like Moulton, because he gets it. There's been a complete breakdown in common sense from the left. And if they don't get it back, they're going to be out of office a long time. In a few moments, I'll be joined by tonight's stellar panel. But first, the author, disruptor, legend, co-founder of Blaze Media. I could go on, but I won't. It'd only embarrass him. Glenn Beck, welcome back to Uncensored.
Thank you. I can't believe, Piers, that so much has changed in the world that you and I I view you as an ally in truth.
Right.
And it is, this world is made for strange bedfellows. And what is happening in America, I think America is once again going to, thank God, take the lead on squashing some of these things. And I think a lot of Europeans are right where MAGA, if you will, is. MAGA is completely misunderstood, and it's a different movement than it even was 2 years ago, because now you really have strange bedfellows. You have RFK.
Yeah.
You have Tulsi Gabbard. All of these people, Elon Musk, that we don't agree on everything.
Yeah.
But we found our unum again. You know, America was founded with e pluribus unum from many one. Our one was the Bill of Rights and common sense and reason.
That's the thing, Glenn.
The left has lost it.
It's when Trump made his victory speech, he talked about a core of common sense being underpinning everything that he was about now. It's that. You know, when I've been on, say, Bill Maher's show, you know, Bill Maher, famous liberal, lives in Hollywood, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
But actually, on most things, I agree with Bill Maher. And so do a lot of Republicans now. Because like me, he's looked at the way the woke left have developed and realized they're so insane and so lacking in common sense that they have nothing in common with someone like him or someone like me. So naturally, we gravitate more to the middle. And actually, there's a lot of people there, right, sitting there thinking, I don't want to be extreme about anything.
But see, here's what the left left behind. They used to be liberal, meaning the classic sense of liberal. The classical liberal was somebody who believed in individual rights and common sense.
Yeah.
They just left that behind and changed the word progressive to liberal, and then they lost all of that. And so much has changed on the right now in America. To where, like, for instance, I was for not the Gulf War, but the Iraqi War. When it came out, I really thought that that was the right thing to do. That was the worst thing to do.
Yeah.
We have changed where the conservatives were the ones who said, well, we got to be the policeman. We never liked it, but we felt we had to do the right thing, blah, blah, blah. We are now the ones saying, no, let's get out of everybody's business. Every time we do that, we piss the world off.
So interesting.
And it never works out well for anybody.
It's so interesting you say that, because it reminded me of a column I did where I talked about a really interesting thing about music. So back in the 60s, the Rolling Stones had a big hit with Let's Spend the Night Together. And the Christian conservative right rose up in fury at the lyrics. And when Jagger appeared, I think, on the Ed Sullivan show, they said, you got to change it. And he did, because he's a pragmatic guy, Jagger. So he changed the lyrics. Right. I can't remember what to, but it wasn't let's spend the night together. And it was the conservative right that drove it. And it was the liberal left who were enraged by the censorship. Cut forward 50 years, and you had the furore over Baby It's Cold Outside, one of the most harmless songs ever written, with one of the most harmless videos ever written. This time, it was John Legend, leader of the woke celebrity left, who rewrote the lyrics because it was so offensive to him. So you've seen a complete reversal in positions on music, and you've seen it also, as you say, in war. Isn't that fascinating?
It is so bizarre, because I find myself all the time saying, wait a minute. I've woken up to many of the things like big pharmaceuticals. I've never been against big pharmaceuticals until we hit COVID.
Right.
And then I realized, holy cow, look at this. And I keep saying to, the Democrats who used to be against all of these things, we get it. You were right. Why have you abandoned that?
Yes.
We're now with you if you were still standing in that position. But somehow or another, they made the point. It was very clear, and they've abandoned that. And now they're for all these things that they used to be against. It's so bizarre.
I do find
we're made to look like
I find
radicals.
the issue of the transgender sport issue is the one for me.
Yeah.
When I read the New York Times report that said that the Trump ad, which covered this, only 30 seconds, but it had Kamala's for they, them, Trump's for you, that had potentially moved the needle by just under 3 points, right? And was one of the most effective political ads in modern history. And it completely demolished the lie from the left that nobody cares about this issue. Everyone I've spoken to about that issue cares. And I've been on this thing for 4 years now, where I've said, if you genuinely think it's fair and equal, as you legitimately try and get equal fairness and equality for trans people, if you think that the right way to do that is to erode women's rights to fairness and equality, you are living in cloud cuckoo land. And actually, it's become one of the great dividing points where if anyone on the Democrat left now still thinks it's fine for biological men to basically wreck women's sport and endanger women, then they are now the outliers. It's no longer are we afraid now to say this. Now, as we're seeing, everyone's going, actually, you know what? We're done with that. We're done with it because it lacks basic common sense.
Here in America, what was so bizarre this weekend was we had 2 UFC fights, one in Madison Square Garden, one in Dallas Cowboys Stadium. And both of them ended with kind of a Trump dance, and they were very, very, Trump was very popular. And then with every football score, whoever made the touchdown did the Trump dance. And I realized, oh my gosh, all of a sudden, Trump and the MAGA movement is the cool one.
Yes, isn't that weird?
The left has completely lost cool, which is bizarre.
I knew how different things were. I went to the Madison Square Garden rally, the infamous one. And
the Nazi one.
The Nazi one, with literally half the audience were Jewish. And I was like, whatever.
Right.
But I went there, and it was a really interesting experience. I've never been to a rally before, and it was a very interesting experience. It was an entertaining 6 hours. But I spoke to a Secret Service agent. I said, out of interest, how many protesters turned up? They were expecting thousands. You know, Trump rally in the heart of Manhattan at the Madison Square Garden, the iconic garden. And there 150 people turned up to protest. Now, cut back to 2016, that would have been 150,000. And we've seen no protest marches since Trump won. And in fact, as you rightly say, we've seen the opposite. We've seen, actually, Trump becoming the big unifier. And what did he do? The great bigot chose the gay anthem of YMCA by Village People. One of the great gay musical anthems in the world. He chose that to dance to.
Not a coincidence.
I mean, no, a work of genius, but also because I know Trump, he's not homophobic. He's not a bigot like that.
He's not. He's not. And, you know, I think he's finally, now that, people like RFK and Tulsi and Elon are also on his side, he's going to go back to the guy he's always been. I think he was just hit in the face with a frying pan the first 4 years. I don't know if he was ready for it. I don't know if he took it seriously at the beginning. He didn't know, and he's told me this. I didn't know who to trust. I didn't know where the landmines were. I didn't know. This time he's prepared to be president of the United States. But he also now he doesn't have to be on defense all the time because he's in the zeitgeist. He's the leader of
I
the
think that's
positive
key. But you know what, Glenn?
It is.
I think that's key because in his book, The Art of the Deal, he talks about if you get punched in the face, metaphorically, he means, punch the other guy back 10 times. Right? He's a natural pugilist. He's got that New York pugilist streak. And for the first 2-3 years of his tenure as president, all he got was being punched in the face. Russia collusion, Russia collusion, Russia collusion, blah, 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 blah. It was just endless punching. And he reacted the only way he knows, which was to punch back 10 times. And so it was a constant war of attrition. This time, because there isn't that scale of fury, there isn't that kind of behavior. And even the media are going through, the very liberal dominated media going through a period of self-reflection about everything. Trump doesn't need to be the pugilist now. He can be actually the guy, he could be a transformative president.
Yeah, and he's going to be. I never, ever thought I would say anything like this. He is going to be if he gets this stuff done, he will be remembered at least as the FDR figure reversing everything that FDR did. But he could be so transformative that he could actually, and no offense to, I know what this means, in a completely different way. He could be a Lincoln, a transformational president as much as a Lincoln, restoring the republic and writing. People in America are excited for the first time. I've been saying for a long time, where's the moonshot? Where's the president who will point up to the sky and say, we're going there and we're going to do it and it's going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it. That's what he's captivated right now in America. And Americans are starting to believe again there is a really golden era ahead of us. And I think Europe's going to be swept up in it. If he can get these things done, you're going to have an end to, in a good way, to the tractors in London. You're going to get some of these oppressive globalist kind of restrictions out of people's faces, because they don't know it yet, I don't think, but they should.
Well,
It's
where
over.
was he? Where
It's
was he
over.
yesterday? He was with Elon Musk at the the link of the new rocket, the SpaceX rocket.
Yeah.
And he literally, Musk wants to shoot to Mars, never mind the moon. Right, the scale of ambition is off the charts.
And he will.
So he's got a guy with him who just, ambition knows no bounds with Musk. So I think that is invigorating too.
Yeah, in a way, ambition. I mean, I don't fully trust. He is very, very ambitious, and I don't know if his goals are my goals per se, or humanity's goals. However, he is the, for lack of a better term, the Thomas Edison or probably the Nikolai Tesla of our day. He is the biggest entrepreneur, dreamer, scientist out there.
Yeah.
And that's exciting. The world used to embrace those kinds of people. And for some reason, and we know the reasons, but he's been rejected by so much. Those days are behind us. People want a positive future.
Yeah.
And you never know what the future holds, but I am hoping that Donald Trump is going to do exactly what he said, and none of the negative that the left says he will do.
You know,
I don't
Glenn,
see anything like that.
I never thought we would do like a 15-minute interview where basically we completely agree with each other. And before I ruin it by bringing up anything which could ruin the mood music, I'm going to leave it there and thank you. And how extraordinary that we basically found ourselves in the position where we feel exactly the same way about it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Piers.
Great
You're
to
doing
see
a
you,
great
Glenn.
job. Thank you very much.
All the best.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Well, joining me now is the host of the Amala Ekpunobi show, Amala Ekpunobi, the host of the Luke Beasley show, Luke Beasley, the co-host of the Majority Report, Emma Vigeland, and the conservative commentator, Debra Lea. Welcome to all of you. It's a fascinating time, isn't it, to be alive, because you've so many people like me. I never thought Glenn Beck and I would have a 15-minute chat where basically I nod my way through it, and so does he. Amala, it feels to me, I mean, just this dancing alone that is going on all over America and the lack of mass protests feels very, very different to when Trump won last time. Are you sensing that?
Yes, 100%. And I think a lot of it has to do with the rhetoric that's been surrounding Trump. And I think this collective realization that we no longer have to be fearful of supporting this man, and we can actually be excited about his second term. You know, prior to this 2024 election, he's been called a fascist, a dictator on day one, an authoritarian. He's been likened to Hitler. And I think that created an environment where a lot of people felt like they had to sort of speak in hushed tones about their support of Donald Trump. Some of the exit polls on election day found that young men in particular were more likely than any other demographic to sort of hide or lie about who they were supporting for president. And now that we've gone through this election cycle, the veil is lifted a little bit. People are coming out and they're dancing. They're talking about what this future could look like over the next 4 years. And I don't think they feel as afraid to speak up about these things. Even the media is going and speaking to Donald Trump. And these are publications that would have recently referred to him as Hitler or a fascist. So I think the tables are turning a little bit.
Well, they're even heading down there to kiss the ring, which I never thought I'd see from some of the MSNBC anchors. Luke Beasley, are you joining in the dancing? Are you secretly bopping away there to Young Man by Village People?
Absolutely not. I think
You've got to laugh at that.
So
I mean, before I let
you
go, before you start, you have to laugh at the irony that the guy that everyone on the left calls the biggest bigot in America chose the #1 gay anthem as the one he would dance to on stage. I mean, come on. It's funny.
Heartwarming. So here's what I wish some of you would engage with, which I haven't heard. After Biden won, the MAGA side at large, Trump himself, didn't accept it. I haven't heard you, Piers, say, wow, it's so impressive that whenever our side loses, even though a lot of MAGA folks are saying, if the left loses, they're never going to accept it. They're going to riot this time. It's going to be crazy. We actually accepted it.
Well, not only have I said that, hang on, Luke, hang on. Not only have I said that, I also said,
come on, hang on, like 2 seconds.
You challenged me. I'm going to respond to that one point, which is actually, I said to Trump's face I thought it was disgraceful he didn't accept the election result. All right, and I did say that the Democrats deserve credit for the peaceful transfer. So you're completely wrong about that.
No, during better Piers times you did do that, but I'm talking about just
better Piers
general
times.
understanding.
You mean when you agreed with me?
I wish the MAGA side would do introspection and go, wow, it's not that the left is going, oh, we just love Trump now. It's that we're demonstrating to you what acting like an adult looks like and not lying about the election, not crying for years and years about it, and instead going, even though we still believe Trump has these fascistic tendencies, I still believe he's a threat to our democracy. I'm going to show you what caring about democracy looks like. That's what Biden has done.
Let me respond.
That's what Kamala Harris has done.
Let me respond.
Go for it.
When you say you're not crying about it, you might not be. But all I've seen in the last 2 weeks are people, women in particular, all over TikTok, screaming, cutting their hair off, saying they're never going to have sex with the Trump voter again. And now there's a mass exodus from X because Elon Musk owns it and he's next to Trump, from people like Bette Midler, Barbara Streisand, Don Lemon, you name it, off go the lefties. So I'm afraid there is a massive amount of toys out of the stroller going on. So, you know, you can say all you like. You say all like what great losers you are. All I've seen is a lot of squealing and resigning from platforms because they lost.
You're doing a huge disservice to your audience, putting on the same discussion, trying to overthrow an election, putting together fake electors to prevent the peaceful transfer of power, trying to get local officials to find fraudulent votes that don't exist. You're putting that on the same in the same category as people just being upset, like has happened every time people lose, always, in a way that's completely peaceful. And I've gone through this before on this show specifically, which is you have to look at people in positions of power to really get a sense of the significant responses we're seeing to certain things. So when you look at powerful Democrats, I told you before, Vice President Harris, Biden with character and integrity respected these results, whereas Trump, him being the person in a position of power, not some random person on TikTok, didn't do that.
I agree. Listen, you know what, Luke? I agree with you. I totally agree with you on that. So, you know, just for what it's worth, I agree with you. Let me bring in Emma, because I want to play a clip. This is of this big Nancy Mace row. She's obviously introduced a bill to bar transgender women from facilities on Capitol Hill. This is a week after the Republican-elect Sarah McBride made history by becoming the first openly transgender person elected to Congress. Let's take a look at the Nancy Mace explanation as to why she's doing this.
This effort in response to Congresswoman McBride's coming to Congress?
Yes, and absolutely, and then some. I'm not going to stand for a man, if someone with a penis is in the women's locker room, that's not okay. And I'm a victim of abuse myself. I'm a rape survivor. I have PTSD from the abuse I've suffered at the hands of a man. And I know how vulnerable women and girls are in private spaces. So I'm absolutely 100% going to stand in the way of any man who wants to be in a women's restroom, in our locker rooms, in our changing rooms. I will be there fighting you every step of the way.
Now, Emma, Sarah McBride replied by saying this is a blatant attempt from far right-wing extremists to distract from the fact they have no real solutions to what Americans are facing. To which I say, well, I'm not even vaguely right, and I think it's wrong that biological men who've become trans women should be in women's spaces.
You're not vaguely right, Piers?
No, I'm
just
actually.
listened to a segment
I would say I'm in
where
the centre.
you agreed with Glenn Beck,
no,
one
I would
of the
say that
furthest
yeah,
right
exactly.
commentators in the country
But
repeatedly.
rather
but apparently
like,
something's happening
hang on,
the left
I haven't
because
finished
Bill
yet.
Maher
I
and
haven't
someone
finished
you
yet.
saw on TikTok
I haven't finished yet. Let me ask you a question.
Is being hysterical. Go ahead.
Let me ask a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I do not identify, and I know you believe a lot in self-identity. I do not identify as conservative.
I don't know what that means.
I'm like Bill Maher. I'm just completely bemused by the woke left and how nuts you've all got, right? And I think this
Bill
election...
Maher's an old,
hang on, let me finish.
libertarian
I haven't asked you a
bitter at the
question
world.
yet.
I mean...
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Right? Here's my question. If I, as a man who identifies as a liberal, if I can see why it's so wrong for biological men who have now become trans women to be in women's spaces, to be in women's sport, to be everywhere in women's lives where they historically were not biological men supposed to be, why are you not as exercised by this as a woman? I don't get it.
Why?
You're all about women's rights.
First of all, Absolutely. I host a sports podcast. I care deeply about sports, and I believe that anybody that identifies as a woman should be able to participate in the sport as long as it abides by the particular bylines or guidelines.
You know it's wrong. You know it's unfair.
Said sports league, but actually we're talking here about Nancy Mace, who loves a camera in her face and loves attention wherever she can get it. You know, I find it pretty disgusting that she is basically implying that this trans lawmaker, just by being in her presence in the bathroom, may rape her. I do choose to speak up for women's rights. I believe that I do so on my program, The Majority Report, regularly. And I'm disgusted that Nancy Mace has decided essentially to support Donald Trump wholeheartedly, who has been found liable of sexual abuse in court, and multiple of his cabinet appointments, picks, including Pete Hegseth and Matt Gaetz, have been credibly accused of sexual assault themselves. So apparently it's triggering for her because someone's genitalia may be slightly different in the stall next to her.
When you say credibly accused,
but it doesn't matter to her that Trump has been found liable of sexual assault in court. Piers, has Trump been found liable of sexual assault in court with
Trump was found guilty in a civil action. He denied it, as you know.
Found
and in
liable,
case of
and
the case of Gaetz and Pete Hegseth,
so the preponderance of evidence went in her direction.
Talking.
And she's been
all right, keep talking.
He has been accused by dozens of women. There you go.
Are you finished?
I'm done.
Okay.
I'm done.
When we have a debate, the customary for the host leads it, and you respond to questions. Okay. If I may be so bold. The point is that Hegseth and Gaetz have categorically denied any wrongdoing, and none has been proven against them. In Trump's case, it was a civil action, as you know, not a criminal action. The criminal case against him was shuffling paperwork over an alleged one-night stand with a porn star. So it's not quite how you categorized it. Debra Lea, let me bring you in here.
Has this trans lawmaker been accused of rape? Has this trans lawmaker?
No, but actually, if you are a congresswoman, if you're a congresswoman who survives sexual assault, you should be entitled to feel safe in the restroom.
The presence of a trans woman in the bathroom. Oh gosh, you know, here in New York, there are a lot of multi-gender bathrooms, and I've gone to the bathroom next to a man. Oh my goodness, it was so fearful. What was I going to do with the rest of my life? I mean,
if I found you lurking next to me in a men's restroom, I'd feel fearful. Debra Lea, let me bring you in here. I just think
that is a ridiculous accusation, Piers.
I didn't make an accusation. It was a statement of fact. I would feel fearful.
You would feel uncomfortable? Why would you feel uncomfortable?
If you were lurking around me in a men's urinal, damn right I'd feel uncomfortable.
Lurking? Who's lurking?
Well, what else would you be doing there?
Is this lawmaker lurking?
What else would you be doing there?
Going to the restroom.
I don't want you going to my restroom. Stick in your own restroom. For my safety, never mind yours.
Okay, but would a man be lurking? Would a biological man, is he lurking next to you?
That's the whole point.
Why is there something inherently perverted about going to the bathroom? You right-wingers, and yes, I'm including you in this with this classical liberal BS, are so bad faith. It's incredible. You are linking sexual abuse and sexual assault to trans people inherently, and that is a bigoted statement.
No, I want trans people I want them to have fairness and equality like the rest of us, just not where it erodes women's rights. But Debra Lea, you've been listening to this patiently.
But separate but equal.
Emma,
separate but equal.
We're four people on the panel.
I would like to respond to this.
Debra, your response.
Hey.
As somebody who grew up as an athlete, I would have been terrified if there was a man in my sports, in my leagues, playing against me. My own brother, who's 2 years older than me, anytime we would play basketball against each other, he would knock me down. And you say that you speak up for women's rights, but have you heard about the case in Virginia where a man put on a skirt, even though he went with male pronouns, and went into the bathroom and sexually assaulted a 15-year-old girl, and now the parents are suing the school because they tried covering it up. You want to protect women? We're not saying that every single trans person has violent tendencies, but it's opening this up that any single person, if there's no checks on this, any man can put on a skirt, say, I'm a woman, and go into the bathroom, and it's paving the way to make it easier for predators to attack women. And I don't know why you're so offended that women want to be able to use the bathroom without men in their presence. That is something that is totally normal and fair to ask.
I just find it amazing. Honestly, I find it amazing that on the left, if we talk about abortion, all hell breaks loose. Women should be protected. Women must feel safe. Women must have rights. Women should have autonomy over their bodies. And yet when it comes to sport, you're quite happy for biological males or Let's put it this way.
You know what?
Put it this way.
Actually,
hang
as
on,
someone
hang
who
on,
hosts a
hang
sports
on.
podcast
You've
and
got
cares
to let
about
me finish your
sports,
question.
I think it's a little different
You've got
than
to let me
women
finish your
bleeding out
question.
in parking lots because they can't
Sorry,
get their health care.
Emma, you really
Because
are
if
not
there's-
familiar
you know,
with how
should-
these things
no,
work.
No, Piers.
You have to
Piers,
let me ask
should
a
Yao
question.
Ming have been banned from the NBA because he's too tall?
No.
I mean, we've got to make it be fair in competition.
I tell
Yao
you what's
Ming,
not
he
fair.
towered over these
When
other
you have
players.
when
Shaquille
you have a
O'Neal's little bit
boxer in the
heavier.
Women's Olympics boxing winning a gold medal who has male chromosomes
Amani
and who
Khalif.
beat up one of his
Okay,
opponents.
based on a Russian,
Beats
based on
up
a
one
Russian
of his
federation
opponents,
that
her
has been
opponents, whatever you
widely
want to call
discredited,
this boxer.
That is what they determine.
Please stop talking when I'm talking. It's so boring for everyone watching. They can't hear us if you do that, right?
I mean, this is your
But
whole
Emma-
shtick. I mean, you've been
God's
doing
sake.
debates about the genocide in Gaza.
Am I going to
the
have to
entire
mute you?
time
Because
with
honestly,
both
everyone
sides.
is sick of this now. Just please conduct yourself properly in a
Right.
debate. Otherwise, we get nowhere, right? Let me bring in Amala. You've been waiting patiently. What do
Surely.
you think of this?
Yeah, I mean, I just have a question. How many more anecdotes do you need of women and young girls being assaulted due to these laws and regulations for you to actually care about it? I've heard many stories. I'm in Los Angeles.
Until you
Here
give
at
me a
Wiesbaden, Los
statistic.
Angeles, we had a grown man. Here in Wiesbaden, Los Angeles, we had a grown man actually go into the women's locker room at a spa, expose themselves to all the women there, all of the young girls there. In Loudoun County, Virginia, you had a young girl who was raped in her school bathroom, a place where she is meant to feel safe, by a trans-identifying student. In the state of New Jersey, in their prison system, they allowed trans-identifying women to go ahead and move over to the women's facility. That ended up with 2 pregnant inmates. Be it consensual or non-consensual, it does not matter. These situations are 100% avoidable. And we are in no way characterizing all trans women as being predatory in nature by
No.
any means. It is to say that you are opening a door that needs to remain closed. And our comfort does matter. Our
we
safety
agree.
does matter.
And by the
We
way,
agree.
Amala, by the way,
agree
I tell-
that
by
we
the way,
should-
hang
we-
on,
we should
Emma, I'll
agree-
come
we
back to
agree.
you. Emma, I'll
Yeah.
come back to you. But also
Sure.
fairness matters too. So the United
Absolutely.
Nations 2 weeks ago had a report that said just under 900 medals have been won by trans athletes in women's sport, thus depriving biological actual women from winning medals because they are literally not as strong, not as powerful, do not have the endurance of the trans women athletes because they have male physiology. How can that be right?
Absolutely.
900 medals.
So Piers,
Yes.
how
Explain
about,
to me.
First of all,
Why don't
when
you
there's
care?
First of all, so why don't I care about that? One is the fact that this should be determined by those specific bodies. It's not at the top of my priority list. I
Some
care
are
about
male,
the fact that
some
the
are
majority of
female.
Americans
That's
are
why
running
we
paycheck to
separated in
paycheck,
the
that women are
Olympics.
bleeding out in parking lots, that trans youth are committing suicide at extremely high rates because of this exact kind of rhetoric, where you otherize
This
them
kind
for
of
the gender
rhetoric?
identity of their choice.
What, you mean
where
standing
if
up for
trans
women's
care was
rights?
available to all of these kids, if trans care was available to these kids, they would develop in the exact same way where none of this would even matter. And so back to
Oh,
what
yes,
was
let's
being
get
said
them
before
prior to
about these
puberty.
assaults on other people. Back to what was being said before about assaults on these people. I think they should be prosecuted, and definitely I'm completely against the idea that we should let someone slide just based on their identity if they assault somebody, which is why I'm sure everybody on this panel that is obsessed with this issue has been talking repeatedly over and over again about the rape in male prisons by male prisoners repeatedly against their same
Well, that's wrong
biological
too.
gender.
That's
in
wong
fact,
too.
it happens.
Yes,
so,
it is.
Right. So how many?
But
how
you know
many
what you
news
don't,
cycles
you know
have
what you never
dedicated to
hear,
that very topic?
Emma, you know
How
what you
many
never
news cycles
hear,
have you dedicated
you
to that
never
topic,
hear,
Piers?
you never
No,
hear,
not about this from
Emma,
you.
you never hear about a trans man having an unfair advantage in male sport. Why is that? How come we never hear about that? It
There are
never,
trans men that
ever,
have, because
Why did the
you know
Because
why?
you
amplify
You know
the
why? Because
story,
they don't
it's
win.
a moral panic.
They don't
just
win
like it was with
because they
gay
have
people being
inferior
predators in
physiology.
school, just like it was about how
No,
seductive.
we don't hear about it because it's not an
people who
issue,
are
because they
LGBTQ
can't
are.
win.
No,
Let me bring in. All right, let me bring in
because
Luke.
these are issues that are titillating to white liberals and or
Titillating.
white,
How
conservative
weird you would
women
say
in the
titillating.
suburbs. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, what's ridiculous is that
White
you.
For you, it
conservative
clearly
women.
is. You're not focusing on the more systemic rape issue in our prisons and in our
You haven't asked me about that.
our facilities
You
in this
haven't asked me
country.
about that.
But I just did. Why haven't you been talking about male rape and male
I think
prisons,
it's terrible,
which is way
shameful.
more
All
right,
likely
let me
to
jump in
occur
here, Piers.
than a
Yeah, Luke,
trans
jump in.
Then dedicate more segments to it. Then dedicate more segments to it.
I'll
I
take
do
your
think-
advice on what segments we should be doing. We are the fastest growing YouTube channel in the world, so we're probably getting it about right. Luke.
Okay, yeah. So I do think with all these things, even the Lake and Riley case as an example, we always want to be understand the gravity and the pain of the individual stories that we're talking about that connect to larger issues, but then also include the broader context, which is that with this bathroom issue, you don't see in the data increase in assaults with trans people in the bathroom they identify with, but you do see when they're forced to go into the bathroom they don't identify with or that's aligned with the biological sex they were born as, an increase in assaults on the trans person. So that's important to remember. And I don't think we need to merge every single issue, because I think, as Emma referenced, but as a lot of people acknowledge, while we don't understand what the fixation is necessarily or why this is used to distract from all these other more consequential issues, I don't think most people have an issue with leagues, especially professional leagues, implementing restrictions to make sure things are fair. Sometimes that's, have you transitioned enough where you don't have the edge or whatever it might be. It's fine for those leagues to make sure that it's fair. And I don't think that debate is actually going on like this program might make it out to be.
I think we're going to move on to another. We're going to move on to something else. I mean, look, I just don't think there is any debate to be had about the sport issue. I totally agree.
But on the bathroom,
well, hang on. I totally agree with Trump about the sport thing. Trans women athletes should not be allowed to compete against women. They should have their own category, or they should compete against a category most of them used to compete in, which is the men's category. But the reason they don't is they're making far more money and they're far more successful competing against women because they have an unfair advantage. And that's what's wrong with it. Anyway, I want to move on to Jon Stewart talking about Mika and Joe from obviously MSNBC, who went down to kiss the Trump ring after calling him Hitler for a few years. Let's take a look.
Joe and Mika Brzezinski Scarborough, who famously warned of the growing threat of Trump's fascism, also had an interesting announcement to make.
Last Thursday, we expressed our own concerns on this broadcast and even said we would appreciate the opportunity to speak with the president-elect himself. On Friday, we were given the opportunity to do just that. Joe and I went to Mar-a-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. And for those asking why we would go speak to the president-elect during such fraught times, especially between us, I guess I would ask back, why wouldn't we?
Because you said he was Hitler.
I mean, Debra Lea, Jon Stewart has a point. You know, I like Mika and Joe. And actually, I think there's nothing wrong with them not trying to build bridges with Trump. But they did all call him Hitler and a fascist.
No, they didn't.
And an existential threat to democracy. And if you really believe that, it's a bit like Biden inviting Trump for a little, cheerful, chappy photo shoot at the White House. If you really think he's going to finish democracy in America, if you really think he's a fascist, if you really think he's a neo-Nazi, why would you do that?
It's so disingenuous, and that was a lot of Republicans'
Emma, I'll come to you, especially if you agree with me.
You have your time,
groundbreaking
okay?
moment.
Don't worry.
But Debra, you go first.
Joe Biden put on the Donald Trump hat, and as somebody who is a very proud Jew, I'm sick, and we're all sick of the left, even the right, using Jewish atrocities to try and garner the vote for their horrific policies that don't help Jews, they don't help Americans, they don't help anybody, they just destroy America. And so I think it's disgusting that people have been calling Trump Hitler, but it also aligns, they want us to believe that they're saying Trump is Hitler, but then also we have such safe and secure elections in the past, and they would never do anything in this country to ever stop Trump from winning the election. If you thought Donald Trump was truly modern-day Hitler and would be a horrific leader to this country, would you not genuinely do everything in your power to stop him from getting into office?
Of course.
Because if I truly believed that Joe Biden was Hitler, I would do everything, legal or not, to try and stop him from getting into office, because Hitler is the worst person in probably all of history, but definitely modern history.
Do you know what? I went to the. Do you know what, Debra? I went to the.
Exterminator.
I went to the Madison Square Garden rally. Do you know how many protesters turned up when Hitler came to the middle of Manhattan, the great liberal democracy, in their iconic venue? 150 bothered to get off their lazy backsides from screaming Hitler and fascism for years to go and protest.
I was there too, Piers.
They couldn't be bothered because you know what? It's almost like they didn't believe what
at a Trump rally.
It's like they didn't believe what they were saying, right? Emma, you wanted to agree with me, so I'll come to you.
So there you go. I do agree with you that I think it's pretty disingenuous and crazy that Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough went down there and kissed the ring, or as our producer on our show referred to it, Matt Leck, Kiss the Onion Ring, which was pretty funny given Trump's proclivity for fast food. And it speaks to, yes, the hollowness of our corporate media in terms of what they actually say and believe. The person who actually first really said the Hitler thing was Trump's former chief of staff, who worked closely with him. Also, Trump's ex-wife Ivana, in their divorce proceedings, said that Trump had a book of Hitler's speeches on his bedside table, and other people have accused him of being authoritarian in the past. The problem is that, yes, our corporate media and even, frankly, many in the Democratic Party did not treat the threat that Trump poses with the respective urgency that it requires, and so it rang hollow to voters. This is a problem with the messaging of the Democratic Party, but it does nothing to undercut the very real threat that Trump poses. He was twice impeached in this country, and the second time was for trying to overturn the democratic results of an election that resulted in a violent coup that killed multiple people. So when we talk about Donald Trump as a threat to this country, there doesn't need to be any theoretical conversation. We have very real evidence for it, and now he's learned all the wrong lessons, fast-tracking basically cronies into the administration. And yes, the media rolling over on its belly and accepting his extremist rhetoric is a big part of the problem. And in
Actually,
the history of fascism, corporations capitulating to fascists.
All right, you had me for
is a big part of how fascists get to rise.
You had me for some of that, but
I'm done.
once you start talking about his extremist language and stuff, you're missing the point. The reason he won so big is that most Americans don't think he does have extremist views. They think a lot of it is just common
maybe
sense.
Didn't tell them about it, Piers.
Luke?
That is a failure of the messaging of the Democratic Party. Unfortunately, Donald Trump has said he wants to mass deport millions of people.
You know the biggest mass deporter of modern times in American history?
He should mass deport.
Barack Obama.
I'm going now.
Barack Obama deported 3 million people.
Barack Obama.
Yeah, he's the big deporter. He's one of you
I'm not
lot.
a Democratic hack, Piers.
All right, Luke.
Piers, I'm not a Democratic hack. I will criticize.
Clearly.
Joe Biden has been helping commit genocide for 1.5 years.
All right.
That's
Let me bring
something
Luke
you'll
in.
hear out of my mouth regularly.
Let me bring
I'm
Luke
not
in.
a hack. I call things like they are.
So
I know.
just
a
had
lot comes out of your
just-
mouth, I've noticed repeatedly, and without breaking for breath. So have a breath. Let me bring Luke in.
I feel like I've told you this, Piers. Deborah and I just recently had a conversation on my show. I definitely clarified this for her. No one, again, relevant, prominent Democrats in positions of power are saying Trump is Hitler. Stop with that. It's the whiniest thing. No one says that. If you think we shouldn't
The Madison Square Garden thing was literally described as a neo-Nazi rally. A neo-Nazi rally.
When Trump's
It was full of Jewish people. There was a Holocaust survivor in the front row.
I haven't called it that. I haven't called it that. Can I please finish the dang point? The point that I don't really care about the Mika Joe thing is just, sort of cringe. But much more important is that we keep going around this merry-go-round. Oh, they called him Hitler, now this, now that. I'm sure some random people on the internet say that. But again, that's not the line from Biden and Harris. That's not the line from Trump's
called him a
own former
fascist.
administration. So can you please?
They called him a fascist.
Biden and Harris don't say
a
something
fascist.
Democrats aren't
So you think he is a
That's
fascist?
a horrible line to live by.
Right.
That's ridiculous.
All right, Luke, but Luke, to be clear, Luke, you think he is a fascist?
Of your behavior,
Luke,
Piers, on this
is he
show.
a fascist? Luke, is he a fascist?
Oh, of course, he absolutely exhibits fascistic tendencies.
There we
which
go.
is
So
what
why
he's
did Joe
own
Biden invite a
general said.
fascist to the White House? Is he a fascist sympathizer?
Because, I wanted to mention that from Deborah's point. If you respect democracy first and foremost,
You let a
then the
fascist in the
democratic
room?
will of the people. The democratic will of the people is more important than what you feel about the ideology. And it's important to point out we have to learn from history, not to equate things, but to say, okay, what signs can we get from
So a
past
peaceful
authoritarians
transfer of
that
power
rhetoric
to a
is
man
dangerous?
you believe is a fascist.
I'm curious what you would describe, you, Piers, what you would describe trying to illegally stay in power despite losing an election. What do you call that?
I thought it was completely
Why are you
outrageous what Trump
obsessed with
tried to do.
January 6th?
But I tell you, but Luke,
I explained that to you, Deborah. You know why.
Outrageous.
Hang
Just
on.
outrageous.
Because you wake up and think about it all day, every day. You guys
That's
are
right.
so obsessed.
Luke asked me a
Get
question.
over
Let me
it.
answer. Here's what I think a fascist is. A fascist is somebody who wants everybody else to conform to their narrow worldview. They want to dictate how you lead your life, what
That
books
is
you
not the
read. Hang
definition of
on.
fascist.
Don't all jump in. What books you read, what movies
It's just
you can
incorrect
watch.
and
Hang
factually
on.
incorrect what
Try
you're saying.
hard, Emma. Just take a little vow of silence for a few seconds, right? What heroes you're allowed to admire, what statues you can respect, what clothes you can wear, what songs you can listen to, blah, 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 blah. So you know who the actual purest personification of a modern-day fascist is? A member of the woke brigade, because that's exactly what the woke people do. They behave like fascists, and you may not want to hear it, but trust me, you do.
No, based
It's
on your false
fascism.
definition of fascism, you can.
Someone told a bad joke. Cancel him.
Circle.
Destroy him. Fire him. It's fascism.
Yes. Fascism is apparently
Yes,
liberal college students being a little bit too sensitive with their pronouns. It's not a highly militaristic,
We should get rid of all
nationalistic
pronouns.
political ideology
Get rid of
born
all
out
pronouns.
of Hitler
They're
and
all-
Mussolini.
Get rid of them.
Yeah,
So,
you know why? Because the most
No, he, him.
You know.
I hope Democrats
why are you
go on with the
watering down
pronouns.
Fascism,
But listen.
Piers? Why are you watering down fascism, which
Fascist
resulted in
equals
the
woke.
mass
No, I'm calling you the
genocide of
fascist.
6 million
You're
Jews?
watering down
calling you
fascism
the
by saying
fascist.
Donald
ethnic
Trump
groups,
is a
including
fascist. You've done that
LGBTQ+.
yourself.
Yeah.
You
I never
watered
said
down
that.
his
I said he ran a
organization
fascist
for
campaign.
Brzezinski, saying
I said he ran a
saying all
fascist
these
campaign.
Don't all
things.
talk over
You,
each
the
other. We
left,
can't
you
hear
guys
you.
are the ones that are watering down
But
what
Piers,
that
you
means.
set up this false premise. Piers, you set up a
What's the
false
false
premise and a
premise?
false definition that meets no academic standards of what fascism is. I just laid it out for you. Fascism is a highly militarized, nationalistic political ideology that often involves corporate power consolidating with the state. See Elon and Trump going together? That talks about a mythologized past that we need to return to by demonizing either political
make America
opposition
great again.
Plus,
or
again,
specific
can I quickly
migrant
go?
groups. Exactly, but the specific immigrant.
How weird
groups,
you would describe that as
targeting
fascism.
the mass deportation is. You could describe it as
Let me
ethnic
bring
cleansing
in.
in
All
some
right,
of
let
the
me
more
bring in.
extreme
Hang on. Let me bring in
circumstances.
Amala.
No, I'm using an academic
Hang on.
definition of
Stop
fascism,
shouting.
not
Do my
this
ears in.
top
You're
garbage.
doing my ears in, Emma.
I mean-
Amala, is
No, it's
making
ethnic
America great
cleansing.
again a form of fascism? Because it goes back in America's history.
Not in my opinion, no. I think people have really run with this whole, I don't know, shall we call it slogan, and made it into something that it is very much not. America has virtually always been great, in my opinion, especially with its ideals and its values. And when we talk about these two journalists who chose to go to Mar-a-Lago and sit across from Donald Trump, I think we saw Sonny Hostin of The View say, how can you really speak truth to power if this is how you're going to treat Donald Trump? How else do you speak truth to power if you won't go and sit at the table across from it? When we talk about Mika and Joe, the real problem is that they've likened him to Hitler. They've called him a fascist. They called him a threat to democracy. It's not a problem that they're going to Mar-a-Lago, as journalists should,
I agree.
to speak to one of the most powerful people in the world.
I totally
if
agree
they
with you.
maintain their journalistic integrity, that's more than okay.
Yeah, totally agree with you. I want to switch gears slightly.
Closing thought, Piers.
Hang on, Luke. I want to change gear. Just we've got a few minutes left. I want to talk about the nominee picks, which I'm sure have sent you into some form of metaphorical anaphylactic shock. But let's go through them. I mean, here's why I look at it in totality. A, I'm going to wait for them to see who gets confirmed. B, I want to wait and see them what they do. Then I will pass judgment. But actually, if you look at a lot of them, like Linda McMahon, unbelievably successful entrepreneur in America, building one of the great businesses in modern America, billions and billions of dollars pouring in, very strong educational bent. Why wouldn't you want someone like that running a big department in an American presidency, administration?
So just quickly closing thought on the last thing. It's crazy that we do this, like I said, merry-go-round, we go back and forth on the fashion stuff. We're just saying, I don't like the Trump post on Truth Social, a massive fraud that's type of magnitude allows for termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even though it's found in the Constitution, saying that the Constitution should be terminated.
Can we move on to the other thing?
I don't-
Because
just
you're
quickly,
getting a bit
and
in the weeds there.
Last thing, I don't like that he said the government should come down hard on MSNBC. Stuff like that, I go, no, it looks kind of fascist. And the fact that we point that out is not us calling him Hitler. But yes, I don't think on some of them they will be less controversial. And then, yeah, I'm really concerned that, for example, Matt Gaetz could be our next Attorney General. That gives me a major ick.
Deborah?
I'm excited.
sorry,
I think that
what
this
was
is
the
No,
so
Emma,
far,
your name's
especially
not
at my
Deborah.
end, been the
I thought you said
that
my
this,
name. I
so
apologize.
far, his appointments have been the most pro-Israel members and the most pro-America members. I think Marco Rubio, Elise Stefanik, these are all incredible people that I have looked up to for a long time, good, true leadership, and I'm so excited. I think that this is the dream team, and we're going to make America. I agree with Amala, of course. America has always been fabulous, but we can always improve and get back to the great values like freedom of speech, like protecting women, protecting children, having fair, free economy, and supporting small businesses, and everything that truly makes makes America the most fabulous, amazing country in the history of the world. So I'm excited. I think this is going to be even better than the last administration, and we have a lot of work to do. And having the House and the Senate, hopefully that means that we can really just knock out legislation and take back this country to what we know it can be, which is a great free light that the rest of the world looks at and wishes they could be us, which they still do.
All right, but Deborah, Matt Gaetz, Attorney General, really?
So on that one, there was an article put out by Fox where they actually granted anonymity to a lot of GOP House members and Senate members, where they were saying that they don't believe that he's going to get confirmed, that they're not going to confirm him.
What do you think?
So like you, Piers, I'm also waiting now. I'm not so sure that they will confirm him, but at the end of the day, if we do have a majority, I could see it happening. Do I think I should confirm him? Personally, I do not. I think that it's important for me to have strong leadership and people who can be examples. And while I do believe, I don't just think that we should believe all women who make accusations. I think it's important to elect people who young men and women can look up to and really feel confident in. So I would prefer somebody who was maybe a little bit more experienced, maybe somebody a little bit less controversial. But I do like the things that he says. I think he's funny, and I think he would do a good job as press secretary too, because he doesn't care. He knows exactly what to say, and he's 100% Matt Gaetz, which I respect.
Okay, Emma, I assume you hate all of them, so let's just choose the 3 you hate most.
Oh gosh, I mean, I'll just essentially say that I think the Linda McMahon point is really unfortunate. I don't really care if somebody can make a lot of money, specifically the McMahons did on union busting their workforce. I care more about if they care deeply about education policy and making sure that we don't gut the Department of Education, which has been a stated goal of the Trump team. I'm deeply concerned about
hang on.
On that. Plans to gut the administrative state,
let me come back to you on education. I mean, given how far behind America is in the global league tables on so many education metrics, why are you comfortable about the way the Department of Education has run things for the last few decades? They're getting
I am absolutely not comfortable with it. I believe
China and countries like that.
Well, in part due to Republican policies, including Betsy DeVos and other Republican states furthering voucher programs that suck public money and funnel them into private institutions. So.
What about the 8 years of Bill Clinton, the 8 years of Barack Obama?
The Biden administration
what about
did
the 4 years
better.
of Joe Biden?
I did not agree.
Don't just blame Republicans.
I mean, yes, unfortunately, voucher programs were a little bit more bipartisan back during the Obama days, but we just saw it got rejected in a red state.
So that isn't why America's falling so far
Andy
behind.
Beshear. You're not letting me finish my sentence. I mean, for all your accusations with me, you're cutting me off in the middle of what I'm saying.
Please finish.
I'm saying what I'm concerned about for the Trump administration. So I'm concerned that they are, as they have stated, going to gut the administrative state, which includes our Department of Education, the Department of Transportation, all of these things that make the government function. His essentially stated goal has been to do away with them. The Republican Party also has for the past 100 years, been trying to gut Social Security. I believe that they also want to cut into Medicare and Medicaid when they talk about raising the retirement age. That's essentially a cut. These are programs that Social Security keeps nearly 2/3 of our seniors out of poverty. I am terrified about that prospect, and that is what and so I don't think it's liberal hysteria because I'm concerned about people going into poverty. And if you want to make it about blue-haired weirdos on TikTok, sure, but these have material consequences for the majority of our population.
Okay, Amala, before we finish, I want to talk to you just completely separately about P. Diddy, because you've had a very interesting experience with Diddy. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so just yesterday, we had 2 private investigators, the day before yesterday, go ahead and visit an old residence of mine. They showed up at the door. Now, a friend of mine remains at that residence. She answered the door. These 2 men were claiming to be there to talk to me about my YouTube channel, whether or not I received funding for any of the stories or topics that I cover on my show. She ended up giving me a call. I was able to speak to these 2 men as they were at her door. And through lots of probing and asking them several questions about who they work for and why they were at my door, they end up admitting that they are private investigators who are working on behalf of a client that they would not disclose, traveling around to the houses of influencers, knocking their doors and trying to figure out whether or not they've been paid by a certain institution, company, entity to discuss P. Diddy's lawsuits and his connection to other celebrities. Now, upon finding out that I was not paid, they also let me know that had they found out I was paid by a certain company, entity, client, they would offer to pay me to disclose exactly who that was. And they'd like to know the business deal that I made with them in order to pay me more to promote the opposite narrative. So obviously I was taken aback by this visit. Very, very strange.
Very strange. And there's a lot of stuff swirling around about this case. I suspect we've only heard the half of it so far, but thank you for sharing that. And yeah, very, very concerning, actually, the way that went down with you. Thank you to my panel. Emma, lovely to have you on Uncensored. Let's end on a happy note, shall we?
Hey, nice to meet you, Piers.
Luke, good to see you again. Deborah, good to see you again. And Amala, thank you very much again for coming back on. I appreciate it.